Now we're going to focus on adding and subtracting fractions. To add fractions, the fractions must have the same denominator. Remember, the denominator is the bottom number in a fraction. Two fractions with the same denominator are called like fractions. So like fractions are fractions that have the same denominator. So this makes it very easy since we have to have the same denominator in order to add fractions. Like fractions make it easy for us to quickly and easily add these. When adding like fractions, what we're going to do is we're going to write the sum of the numerators, which the numerator is the top number, over the denominator, and we'll add them. So if we look at the example, we have 3 over 14, 9 over 14, 2 over 14. 14 is the same, so I'll just keep 14 down at the bottom, and then I'll go ahead and add the top numbers. We're going to write any improper fraction as a mixed number and be sure that the fractions are in the lowest term. So here we have, we add them, 14 over 14 of course is 1, but if we look in the practice, we have 5 over 8 plus 1 over 8, that's going to be 6 over 8, that's going to be our basic answer. It's under 8, but if we look at the second little example there, when we add them, it's 17 over 12. So what we have to do is we have to change that into your mixed fraction. And then we basically, we know 17 minus 12 is 5, so it's going to be 1 and 5/12. Now we get into unlike fractions. This is when the denominator will be a different number. This is a little more difficult. So let's pay attention to what's happening here. First, there are three steps that we're going to go and focus on. First, we're going to focus on finding the least common multiple. Remember, the LCM of the denominator. Okay, the least common denominator, the least common multiple. So we're going to look at those denominators, find out what are the least common multiples of those denominators. I would use your prime factorization. And remember, multiple is the larger numbers. Number 2, we're going to rename those fractions using the LCM, the least common multiple of the denominator, so least common denominator. And then number 3, we're going to add. Now, if necessary, we're going to express the answer as a mixed number. Okay, and we'll rename those fractions in lowest terms. Okay, so if it's an improper fraction, we're going to change it to a mixed number. So let's look at the example. 2 over 3, 2/3, 1 over 6, and then 4/9. So we have to find the least common multiple of 3, 6, and 9. Okay, so we do prime factorization. Okay, 3 is just left by itself. 6 is broken up into 2 and 3, and then 9 is divided into 3 and 3. So we know 3 and 3 is 3 squared. So 3 squared, and then we have the 2 and 3. We ignore that 3 from the 6, and we'll just keep the 2. So 3 squared times the 2. Now we ignore the first 3 because 3 squared is greater than that. So 3 squared times 2. 3 squared is 9, so 9 times 2 is 18. So 18 is the least common multiple of those three numbers, so that would be the least common denominator. So if we look at the right-hand side, I need to figure out how I'm changing 2/3 to an 18. So 3, I have to multiply that by 6 to get 18. So if I multiply the 3, the denominator, by 6, I have to multiply the numerator by 6. So that's going to be 12 over 18. Okay, 1/6, I have to multiply that by 3. Well, if I multiply the denominator by 3, I have to multiply the numerator by 3. So that'll be 3/18. And then we have 4/9. I have to multiply that by 2. Well, if I do that with the denominator, I have to do it with the numerator. We have 8/18. So this is something we will definitely see on the quiz on Thursday. So make sure you know how to find the least common denominator. So especially when we're adding 3 here, we're not really doing anything like cross multiplying. We are focusing on the least common denominator. So we then add 12 plus 3 plus 8, that's 23/18. And then 23 minus 18 is 5. So that's going to be 1 and 5/18. Now, we've talked about at the beginning of the year about estimating what is close. So a fraction is close to 1 if the numerator and denominator are about equal. Now, if the fraction is close to half, that means the numerator is about half that size, okay? It's half of it, half of its denominator. So like 1 over 2, that's going to be half. 2 over 4, that's going to be half. And then a fraction is close to 0 if that numerator, that top number, is a very small number compared to the denominator. You can also use estimation to estimate sums, okay, addition. So if we look at the example, 19 over 20, okay, it's close to 20. 1 over 6, it's close to 0. And then 5/8 is very close to 4/8, so that's close to half. So I could just say 1 plus 0 plus half, and that's 1 and a half. Okay, let's look at the practice. Okay, 9 over 20, it's very close to 10 over 20, so that's I could estimate that to a half. 1 over 5 is close to 0 out of 5. It's closer to the 0 part than the 2 or 3, so that would be 0. 8/15 is very close to 8/16, which would be about half. And then 8 over 9 is very close to 9 over 9. That would be 1. So I'm just estimating. Okay, now we're going to move on to our last little part here, and that's subtracting fractions. Now, to subtract a fraction, the fraction must have the same denominator, and that's going to be focusing again on like fractions. That makes it very easy. I keep the denominator the same as you look in the example. Okay, 18 stays the same. Okay, but we subtract the numerator. So 17 minus 5 is going to be 12 over 18, and then I can simplify that into 2 over 3. Okay, if we take a look at the practice ones, the denominator stays the same, so it's just 15 minus 7, that's 8 over 16, and I can basically simplify that into a half. And we can also see that in the practice number 2. Even if we have more than 2 fractions, we're keeping the denominator is the same number, so it's like fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract and then simplify. But when we have unlike fractions, just like with our addition, I need to rename those fractions as equivalent fractions. I'm going to use the least common multiple here, okay, or least common denominator. I need to get that denominator the same, and don't forget how I do that. If I change the denominator, I then have to change the numerator. Okay, so if I look at 11 over 12, the least common denominator is 12. So 11 over 12 stays the same, but I'm going to be impacting the 1 over 4. Okay, 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, so if I multiply that 4 times 3, then I have to multiply the 1 times 3. So it's 11 minus 3, which is 8/12, and that's going to be 2/3 if I simplify.